But one by one, Alliance vessels broke through the enemy lines. The Earth cruiser Freedom sacrificed itself to clear a path for Kethmer crystal ships. A Jektar bio-vessel used its last genetic weapons to disable a Hunter dreadnought blocking. The Way. Danny Foster, now commanding a squadron of mixed human and alien fighters, led the final attack on the Gateway's power core. His neural links with pilots from 3 different species allowed perfect coordination as they dove through defensive fire that should have been impossible to survive. Target the crystal matrices at the base of the structure, Dr. Roberts broadcast. That's where they're storing the energy from consumed worlds. The attack run was a nightmare of phasing weapons and bioship defenders. Danny watched half his squadron get destroyed in the first 30 seconds. But the survivors pressed on, their mixed crews working together with superhuman coordination. When Danny's fighter reached the target, he found himself face to face with the heart of the Hunter Gateway, a pulsing mass of crystallized life energy from billions of murdered beings. It was beautiful and horrible at the same time. For everyone they killed, he whispered, and fired every weapon his ship had. The explosion that followed lit up the void between galaxies. The gateway structure began to collapse, its stolen energy released in a chain reaction that spread through the entire Hunter fleet. But the collapsing gateway created its own problem. The released energy was forming a black hole that would consume both galaxies if it wasn't contained. All remaining ships form energy containment grid around the collapse point, Jake ordered. Use everything we've got. What happened next became legend throughout the galaxy. Ships from dozens of different species, badly damaged and barely functional, positioned themselves around the growing black hole and created a combined energy field using every technology they had developed together. Fusion reactors powered Kethmer crystals. Jektar biosystems channeled melanary phase energy. Species that had never trusted each other worked as one mind with many bodies to redirect the collapsing gateway's energy. Engineer Rachel Davis, working frantically in the damaged engineering section of Jake's command ship, found the solution. We can use the Kethmer crystal matrices to redirect the energy through dimensional phase space. It'll disperse harmlessly across multiple realities. The plan worked barely. As the black hole collapsed safely into phase space, the surviving Hunter bioships, cut off from their gateway and their collective purpose, simply drifted lifeless through the void. The war was over. Of the 2,000 ships that had begun the battle, fewer than 300 survived. But they had done the impossible. They had not only saved their own galaxy, but potentially every galaxy in the universe. In the months that followed, as the Alliance helped rebuild worlds damaged by centuries of Hunter attacks, the galaxy changed in ways no one had expected. The old Galactic Confederation, embarrassed by their abandonment of loyal species and their refusal to fight when needed, dissolved itself. In its place rose the new Galactic Alliance, based on the principles the abandoned Alliance had proven in battle. That diversity creates strength, that cooperation is more powerful than competition, and that no one fights alone. Jake, now bearing the title Defender of the Galaxy, whether he wanted it or not, stood once again on Zirian 7. The planet had been restored using technology developed by the Alliance, its crystal cities rebuilt, and its people returned from their long exile. Elder Vexthul, now ancient beyond measure, stood beside him looking out at the desert that had once been infected with Hunter spores. Do you think it will last? The old Kethmer asked. This peace we have built? Jake watched ships from dozens of worlds landing at the spaceport, bringing trade and friendship to a world that had been hidden and forgotten for centuries. It'll last as long as we remember what we learned, he said. That the abandoned aren't worthless, that the forgotten have value, that when different people work together, they can do impossible things. Vexthul's scales shifted to bright gold, the color of joy and hope. Then it will last forever, he said. because that lesson was bought with the lives of heroes from every world in the galaxy. No one will forget. As the twin suns set over the crystal spires of the restored city, Jake smiled. The war was over, but the alliance they had built would endure. The abandoned had become the saviors, and the galaxy was better for it. The human motto had spread to every species in the alliance. None fight alone. And in a galaxy where cooperation had replaced abandonment, those words meant everything. Admiral, with respect, you don't understand what we're dealing with here. The hunter threat is real, and it's coming for Earth, whether we acknowledge it or not. That's not your decision to make, Commander. Earth has been in contact with the Galactic Confederation. They've assured us that these abandoned species are quarantined for good reason. They're considered dangerous and unstable. Jake felt anger building in his chest. Around him, the alien crew members continued their work, but he could sense their tension. They understood enough human language to know what was being said. Dangerous? Jake said, Admiral, these people have been fighting for their survival. For centuries. They're the only ones who know how to hurt the hunters. The Confederation calls them the Void Hunters, and they claim the threat is under control. The abandoned races are to remain isolated until proper quarantine procedures can be established. Elder Vexthal stepped forward, his ancient scales showing patterns of deep sadness. Admiral Young, he said in careful English, may I speak? Young looked surprised to see the alien leader. This is a human military matter, Commander Sullivan. These aliens should not be present for classified discussions. These aliens saved my crew and my ship, Jake said firmly. And they're about to save your species too, if you'll listen. Vexthal bowed respectfully to the screen. Admiral, I understand your concern. My people were once suspicious of outsiders as well. But the threat we face consumes entire worlds. If we do not work together, we will all die alone. Before Young could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the base. Dr. Lisa Chun looked up from her science station, her face pale with shock. Long-range sensors are detecting hunter bioships, she announced. Multiple contacts heading for the Kepler system, where the Jektar colonies are located. The main display changed to show a tactical map of local space. Dozens of red dots were moving toward a cluster of stars, where millions of insect-like Jektar lived in their asteroid too. Years had passed since the abandoned alliance was formed. Jake, now promoted to general, stood in the command center of their massive battle station orbiting a dead star. Around him, beings from 50 different species worked together preparing for the most important battle in galactic history. The alliance had grown beyond anything he could have imagined. Species that had been hiding in the dark corners of the galaxy for centuries had emerged to join the fight. The insectoid Jektar brought their bioengineering skills. The energy beings called Melanari shared their phasing technology. Even races that had never been part of the old Galactic Confederation came forward to help, but today would test everything they had built. Final scanner reports confirm it, Dr. Amy Roberts announced to the assembled commanders. The Hunter Gateway is nearly complete. Our estimate is 72 hours before it becomes operational. The main display showed the massive structure the Hunters had been building in the void between galaxies. It was enormous, larger than entire solar systems, made from the consumed matter of thousands of destroyed worlds. When activated, it would open a doorway for unlimited numbers of hunters to pour into their galaxy. Fleet status? Jake asked Captain. Marcus Stone of the Earth battleship Liberty answered first. Human forces report ready. 120 ships, all equipped with hybrid weapons. Elder Vexthal spoke for the Kethmer. Our crystal ships are charged and ready. We have learned to make our weapons even stronger by combining them with human fusion power. The Jektar representative, a being called Hive Mind Prime 7, buzzed. Its response: bioships prepared, genetic weapons loaded and ready to corrupt hunter systems. Whisper of Stars, speaking for the Melanari, simply said, "We are ready to phase the entire fleet across dimensional barriers." Jake nodded. The plan was desperate and dangerous, but it was their only chance. They would use Melanari phasing technology to move the entire Allied fleet directly to the Hunter Gateway, bypassing the bioship defenders. Then they would use every weapon they had developed to destroy the structure before it could activate. "Remember," Jake addressed the mixed crowd of human and alien commanders, "we're not just fighting for our own worlds anymore. Intelligence suggests the hunters have done this before in other galaxies. If we fail, they'll keep moving, consuming everything until there's nothing left in the universe." Admiral Patricia Young, now Jake's second in command, stepped forward. "General, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Confederation. They want to surrender the Outer Rim systems to the Hunters in exchange for peace." Jake felt disgust rise in his throat. "What did you tell them?" "That the abandoned Alliance doesn't abandon anyone. We fight for every world, or we fight for none." 3 hours later, the largest fleet in galactic history began its jump toward the void between galaxies. Nearly 2,000 ships from dozens of species, all working together with technology that had been developed through cooperation and shared sacrifice. The journey took 6 hours, through the strange phased space that the Melanari had taught them to navigate. When they emerged near the Hunter Gateway, the sight took everyone's breath away. The structure was beautiful in its horrific way, made of crystallized matter from consumed worlds, pulsing with the life energy of billions of dead beings. It stretched across space like a massive ring, easily large enough for entire fleets to pass through, and defending it were more hunter bioships than anyone had ever seen in one place. Thousands of them, ranging from small fighters to massive dreadnoughts, larger than space stations. "Enemy count is over 3,000 vessels," reported Lieutenant Karen Lewis from the sensor station. "They knew we were coming." "Of course they did," Jake said grimly. "This has been their plan all along. Draw us into one final battle where they can destroy us all at once." The Hunter fleet moved to attack, their bioships pulsing with organic weapons that could tear apart planets. But the Alliance was ready. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships phased in and out of reality. Weapons that combined the technology of multiple species tore through Hunter defenses, and coordination between different races reached levels that seemed almost magical. Human pilots linked with them. Kethmer gunners created weapon combinations that adapted to every Hunter defense. Jektar bioships released genetic weapons that turned Hunter regeneration against itself. Melanari energy beings possessed Hunter vessels and turned them against their own fleets, but the Hunters were fighting for their ultimate victory. As Alliance ships were destroyed, the bioships began to adapt, their organic systems learning to counter every new tactic. "We're losing ships faster than we can replace them," reported Captain Stone as his battleship took heavy damage. "The gateway is starting to power up. We're running out of time." Jake made the hardest decision of his life. All ships concentrate on the gateway structure itself. Ignore the Hunter fleets. It was a suicide mission. To reach the gateway, they would have to fly through the entire Hunter armada. Most of the ships wouldn't make it. Took significant damage to its forward weapons. But then the Hunters adapted. The phase fighters stopped phasing randomly and began working together, creating overlapping fields that made them nearly impossible to hit. The energy leeches formed, protective barriers around the bioships, draining power from any attack that got through. "We're losing power fast," Tony reported from the engine room. "These leeches are like cosmic vampires." Jake watched 3 Kethmer fighters get overwhelmed and destroyed. They were down to 16 ships now, and the hunters hadn't even begun their real attack yet. Then Sarah made a discovery that changed everything. "Jake, I'm picking up massive energy signatures from the edge of the system. Something big is coming. Through hyperspace." The display showed new contacts approaching fast, but these weren't hunter bioships. They were geometric and crystalline, clearly artificial, but beautiful in their alien design. "Melanari vessels," Vexthal said with wonder. "I thought they were all dead." The Melanari ships were unlike anything Jake had ever seen. They looked like they were made of condensed starlight, shifting between solid matter and pure energy. As they entered the battle, they began doing impossible things. They passed through hunter attacks like the weapons weren't there, then solidified just long enough to fire back. Their energy beams were different from Kethmer weapons, seeming to attack the very essence of the bioships, rather than just their physical structure. But the most amazing thing happened when the Melanari ships came near the human and Kethmer vessels. Suddenly, all the allied ships could phase in and out like the enemy fighters. "They're sharing their abilities with us," Lisa said in amazement. "Some kind of energy field that lets us shift between dimensions." The battle turned into something out of a dream. Ships appeared and disappeared. Weapons fired through solid matter, and the hunters found themselves fighting enemies they couldn't predict or counter. But the hunters weren't finished. The largest bioship, easily twice the size of the others, moved toward the planet. Its mouth opened, revealing a weapon unlike anything they had seen before. "Planetary consumer," Zarkeen whispered. "It will drain the life from the entire world." Jake made a desperate decision. "All ships, concentrate fire on the big one. We have to stop it before it reaches the planet." The entire Allied fleet attacked the massive bioship, their combined weapons finally starting to damage its organic armor. But it was too little, too late. The planetary consumer began to glow, preparing to fire. That's when the Jektar arrived. There. Ships were different from both human and Kethmer vessels. They looked grown rather than built, with organic curves and living surfaces. But unlike hunter bioships, these felt warm and natural, like plants or trees shaped into spacecraft. Jektar fleet was small, only 8 ships, but what they lacked in numbers, they made up for in firepower. Their weapons were biological, firing living creatures that burrowed into hunter ships and ate them from the inside. "Genetic weapons," Peter observed with fascination and horror. "They're using engineered organisms as ammunition." The effect on the hunters was devastating. For the first time in the battle, the bioships showed real damage that they couldn't heal. The genetic weapons were rewriting their biological structure, turning their own healing abilities against them. The largest bioship's planetary weapon flickered and died as Jektar organisms consumed its power systems. 2 smaller bioships began to retreat, their surfaces covered with spreading infections that ate away at their hull plating. But victory came at a price. The hunters, realizing they were losing, launched everything they had. The sky filled with phase fighters, energy leeches, and stranger creatures that defied description. Jake watched in horror as a Melanari ship was overwhelmed and destroyed. 3 more Kethmer fighters were lost in a desperate attack run. Even some of the Jektar vessels took heavy damage. The battle raged for 6 more hours. When it finally ended, only 2 hunter bioships remained, and they were fleeing toward the edge of the system. The others were destroyed or too damaged to continue fighting, but the victory felt hollow. Of the original 23 Kethmer fighters, only 8 remained. The Melanari had lost 2 ships, and 1 Jektar vessel was barely functional. Ohm's ship had taken heavy damage, its hull scarred by hunter weapons, and its systems running on emergency power. "Status report," he asked Tony. "We're alive, but just barely. Engines are at 30%, weapons are offline, and the Kethmer crystal arrays are completely drained. On the planet below, things were even worse. The hunter attack had scattered biological spores across the surface, and the desert was already beginning to change. Where the spores landed, the sand was turning black and twisted. "The planet is infected," Vexthal said quietly. "In months, maybe less, it will be uninhabitable. The hunters may have lost the battle, but they are still winning the war." Jake stared at the tactical display, watching the two surviving hunter ships disappear into hyperspace. They had achieved something that should have been impossible, a coalition of abandoned races had fought the hunters and won, but it was only one battle in a war that had raged for centuries. And now the hunters knew where to find them. "We need to evacuate," he said finally. "All of us. This world is dying." "Where will we go?" asked Danny, his voice tired from the neural interface strain. "Somewhere we can gather more allies," Jake replied. "The galaxy is full of abandoned races, forgotten peoples that the Alliance left to die. It's time to find them all." Elder Vexthal nodded slowly. "A new alliance, built not on convenience or politics, but on the promise that none fight alone." As the Allied fleets began rescue operations on the dying planet, Jake felt something he hadn't expected after such a costly victory. He felt hope that the hunters could be beaten. It would take sacrifice, courage, and unity between races that had never worked together before. But it could be done. The real war was just beginning. 3 months after the battle at Zerion 7, Jake stood on the bridge of a ship unlike any human had ever seen. The vessel was a combination of technologies from 4 different species, built in the hidden asteroid base that had become their new headquarters. The base itself was a marvel of cooperation. Human engineers worked alongside Kethmar crystal specialists, Shektar biobuilders, and Melanari energy manipulators. The result was something that shouldn't have been possible, a space station that existed partly in normal space and partly in other dimensions, making it invisible to hunter sensors. Admiral Young's fleet just dropped out of hyperspace, Sarah Kim reported from her station. 12 ships, including the new Earth battlecruiser Defiance. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Earth had finally responded to their reports about the hunter threat, but the response wasn't what he had hoped for. Admiral Patricia Young was a good soldier, but she followed orders without question. And Earth's orders were clear: end all contact with the abandoned races and return home immediately. "Put her through," Jake said. Admiral Young appeared on the main screen, her face stern with military discipline. Behind her, Jake could see the bridge of Earth's newest warship, armed with the most advanced weapons humanity had ever built. "Commander Sullivan," she said formally, "I'm here under direct orders from Earth Command to bring you and your crew home. This unauthorized contact with alien species ends now. Face 7 moon-sized ships. Maybe we don't need a big army," he said slowly. "Maybe we just need to be smart." Sarah had managed to boost their communication systems using Kethmer crystal amplifiers. "I'm picking up transmissions from across the galaxy. Other worlds are under attack. The hunters aren't just coming here. They're everywhere." She played some of the intercepted messages. Desperate calls for help in dozens of different languages. Warnings of approaching bioships. Last messages from dying worlds. "Wait," Peter said, studying the transmission patterns. "Some of these aren't cries for help. They're responses. Someone is answering." The message was faint, almost lost in the static, but it was there. 3 simple words repeated over and over. "We are here." "It's coming from the Kepler sector," Sarah said. "That's where the old archives said the Jiktar mining colonies were located." Zarkeen's scales brightened with hope. "The Jektar still live? We thought the hunters had found them years ago." "Who are the Jektar?" Jake asked. "Another abandoned race. insect-like beings who are master builders and engineers. If they survived, they might have weapons or ships that could help us. Elder Vexthal was already moving toward the communication center. And if the Jektar live, perhaps others do as well. The Melanari were driven into the gas giant systems. We lost contact with them decades ago, for the first time since arriving. On Zirian 7, Jake felt a spark of real hope. They weren't alone in this fight. Across the galaxy, other abandoned races had survived, hidden in the darkness, waiting for someone to find them. "Send the message," Jake ordered. "Tell them humanity stands with the abandoned. Tell them we're all going to fight together." As Sarah began transmitting, the deep space sensors detected the hunter ships entering the outer edge of the system. The final battle was still days away, but Jake could already feel it coming. The Kethmer had waited 400 years for this moment. Soon they would learn if hope was stronger than despair, if unity could overcome the darkness that consumed worlds. The hunt was about to begin. The hunter ships arrived like nightmares made real. Jake stood in the Kethmer command center, watching the main display as 7 massive bioships entered the system. Each one pulsed with organic life, their surfaces covered in what looked like veins and muscle tissue. They moved through space like living creatures, turning and flexing in ways that made his skin crawl. "Distance to target?" he asked. 12 hours at current speed," Zarkeen replied, her scales shifting to dark red with fear. "They're scanning the system, looking for signs of life." Around them, Kethmer warriors prepared for a battle they had dreaded for centuries. Their crystal weapons hummed with stored energy, and their few remaining fighters were being fueled and armed. The humans had worked without sleep for the past 3 days, helping to prepare defenses. Tony Blake had managed to connect human fusion reactors to the Kethmer energy grid, giving them more power than they'd had in generations. Lisa Chun had figured out how to link human computers to the alien weapon systems, making them faster and more accurate. But everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. "Sir," Danny Foster called from the pilot station, "I'm reading something strange. The bioships are launching smaller craft." The display zoomed in to show swarms of smaller ships emerging from the hunters' main vessels. But these weren't normal spacecraft. They phased in and out of reality, becoming transparent ghosts that conventional weapons couldn't touch. "Phase fighters," Elder Vexthal said grimly. "They will test our defenses first, probe for weaknesses. The main attack will come after." Jake made the hardest decision of his life. All human crew, battle stations. "We're not running from this fight." Alex Rodriguez looked at him with concern. "Jake, the Horizon isn't a warship. We've got basic shields and some mining lasers. Against those things, then we'll have to be creative," Jake said. "Sarah, any response from the other abandoned races?" "I'm getting signals from the Jektar colonies," Sarah Kim reported. "They're sending ships, but they won't arrive for at least 2 days." "What about the Melanari?" "Nothing yet." "The gas giant atmospheres might be blocking our transmissions." The first phase fighters reached the planet's outer defenses. Jake watched as Kethmer energy weapons fired at the ghostly ships, their crystal beams disrupting the aliens' phasing ability just long enough for the shots to connect. Several fighters exploded in balls of organic fire, but for every one destroyed, 3 more took its place. "They're learning our firing patterns," Zarkeen observed. "Each wave comes in differently." "Then we change our patterns too," Jake said. "Danny, take your ship up. Use the neural interface to coordinate with the Kethmer." "Pilots." Danny nodded and ran for the hangar. Minutes later, his fighter launched from the underground base. Its human pilot linked directly to the Kethmer flight control systems. The result was unlike anything either species had seen before. Danny's human creativity combined with Kethmer precision and speed, allowing him to anticipate the phase fighter's movements in ways their programmed minds couldn't predict. Within minutes, he had destroyed 6 enemy craft without taking a hit. Incredible, Vexthal breathed. How is this possible? Human brains work differently than yours, Dr. Peter Grant explained. We're chaos thinkers. We make random connections and sudden leaps of logic. Your neural crystals are translating that chaos into something the fighters can understand. But even Danny's success couldn't stop the growing swarm of enemy ships. More phase fighters poured from the bioships, and now larger creatures were emerging too. These looked like flying jellyfish, the size of shuttles, crackling with energy weapons. Energy leeches, Zarkeen identified them. They drain power from our weapons and shields. The battle intensified as the leeches reached the planet's defense grid. Wherever they touched the energy shields, the barriers flickered and died. Soon, the planet's surface would be exposed to direct attack. We need to take the fight to them, Jake decided. How many ships can we put in space? 23 Kethmer fighters, plus your vessel, Vexthal replied. Against 7 bioships and hundreds of support craft. Jake smiled grimly. Then we better make each shot count. The U.E.'s Horizon launched from the underground hangar, its hull retrofitted with Kethmer crystal weapons and energy shields. Human crew worked at stations they barely understood, but the ship's computer was linked to Kethmer battle systems, giving them capabilities no human vessel had ever possessed. In space, the combined human-Kethmer fleet faced the Hunter Armada. The bioships were even more terrifying up close, their organic surfaces writhing with hostile life. Weapon ports opened like mouths, revealing teeth made of metal and bone. Remember, Jake broadcast to all ships, we're not trying to win. We're trying to survive long enough for help to arrive. The Hunters attacked first, their bioships firing beams of pure destruction that could tear apart asteroids. The small Allied fleet scattered, using speed and unpredictability to avoid the massive weapons. Danny led the fighter attack, his neural link allowing him to coordinate the Kethmer pilots in ways that had never been attempted. They struck at the smaller Hunter ships while the Horizon targeted the bioship weapon systems. For a brief moment, it looked like they might actually have a chance. Several Hunter support ships were destroyed, and 1 bioship. The next morning, Jake woke up in a crystal room deep underground. The Kethmer had given the humans comfortable beds and food that tasted strange but good. Through the crystal walls, he could see the underground city coming to life as its people began their daily work. Lieutenant Alex Rodriguez found him in the dining hall. Commander, you need to see what the Kethmer have been showing us about these Hunters. They walked through tunnels filled with ancient machines that hummed with power. The Kethmer had kept their technology, working for centuries, maintaining systems that most races would have given up on long ago. In a large chamber, they found Dr. Lisa Chon working with a Kethmer named Zarkeen. She was younger than Elder Vexthal, with scales that shifted from green to blue as she concentrated. Arrays of holographic displays surrounded them, showing images that made Jake's stomach turn. Look at this, Lisa said, pointing to the main display. These are records from the last time the Hunters attacked. The hologram showed space filled with ships, but not normal ships. These looked like they were grown instead of built, covered in what looked like skin and tissue. They pulsed with their own heartbeat, and from their surfaces came smaller creatures that flew through space without any visible engines. The Hunters aren't just another alien race, Zarkeen explained, her English better than Elder Vexthal's. They are something else, something wrong. They don't want to conquer worlds. They want to eat them. Eat them? Alex asked. The display changed, showing a beautiful planet covered in cities and forests. Then the Hunter ships arrived. Jake watched in horror as the planet's surface began to change, its green lands turning black and twisted. The cities melted. away like ice and fire. They consume everything, Zarkeen continued, not just the people or buildings. They eat the rocks, the air, the very matter that makes the world exist. When they are finished, there is nothing left, just empty space. Doctor. Peter Grant was studying readings on another screen. But how is that possible? You can't just make matter disappear. They take it somewhere else, Zarkeen said. We believe they are building something in the dark space between galaxies. Something huge. Every world they destroy makes it larger. Jake stared at the displays, trying to understand what he was seeing. How many worlds have they destroyed? In our sector alone, over 200 systems. Billions of lives. Zarkeen's scales turned deep purple with grief. The Alliance knew this was happening. They had the power to stop it. But they decided some worlds were worth saving and others were not. Sarah Kim, their communications officer, looked up from her equipment. I've been trying to contact Earth, but the messages will take weeks to get through. And I'm not sure they'll believe what we're telling them. They have to believe it, Jake said. Because according to these records, the hunters are moving toward human space. Lisa had been working with the Kethmer computers, tracking the hunters' path across the galaxy. If their pattern holds, they'll reach the outer human colonies in about 50 years. Earth itself would be attacked within a century. Unless we stop them. Alex said, "Z, our single quotes keen made a sound that might have been laughter, but there was no joy in it. Stop them? Commander, we tried to stop them. The Alliance had thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. Do you know how many hunter ships we destroyed? How many? None, not one. Their ships heal themselves faster than we can damage them. Their weapons pass through our shields like they don't exist. And when our soldiers board their ships, they never come back out." Tony Blake, their engineer, had been examining Kethmer. "Weapons, but you must have some defenses. You've survived here for 400 years. "Yes, we have defenses," Zarkeen admitted. "We learned to hide, to shield our energy signatures so the hunters cannot find us. And we developed weapons that can hurt them, but only a little." She led them to another chamber where Kethmer scientists worked on crystalline devices that glowed with inner light. These energy weapons can disrupt the hunter's healing abilities. For a short time, they become vulnerable. But it takes enormous power, and the effect doesn't last long. Tony examined the crystal weapons with fascination. The energy output is incredible. How do you power these things? "The crystals store energy from our planet's core," a Kethmer scientist explained. "But each shot drains them almost completely. We can fire perhaps 3 shots before the weapon needs to recharge for hours." Danny Foster, their pilot, was studying holographic displays of hunter ship movements. They travel in groups of 7 to 12 ships. Always the same formation. Maybe we could use that against them. "We tried," Zarkeen said. "They adapt quickly. Any tactic that works once will not work again." Elder Vexthal entered the chamber, his ancient scales showing patterns of worry. "I bring troubling news. Our deep sensors have detected movement in the outer darkness. The hunters have found us." The room fell silent. Jake felt his heart racing. "How long do we have?" "Perhaps days. Perhaps weeks. They move slowly when they hunt, testing each system for life before they strike." Jake made a decision that would change everything. "We're not running. We're going to help you fight." "Commander," Alex said carefully, "our ship isn't built for combat. We're explorers, not soldiers." "Then we'll learn to be soldiers," Jake said firmly. "Lisa, I want you working with their scientists. Learn everything you can about their weapons and defenses. Tony, see if we can combine our technology with theirs." "Sir," Sarah spoke up, "shouldn't we contact Earth? Ask for orders?" "Earth is 3 months away by the fastest ship. By the time help arrives, if it arrives, this world will be empty space. Jake looked around at the Kethmer scientists. These people have been abandoned once. I won't let it happen again. Over the next several days, the humans worked frantically with the Kethmer. Lisa discovered that human computer systems could interface with Kethmar crystal technology, creating combinations neither race had imagined. Tony found that human fusion reactors could be modified to charge Kethmer energy weapons much faster than their planetary power source. Within hours instead of days, the weapons could be ready to fire again. But their most important discovery came when Danny tried to fly a Kethmer fighter. The moment he placed his hands on the crystal controls, something amazing happened. "I can feel the ship," he said, his eyes wide with wonder. "It's like the crystal is reading my thoughts." Zarkeen was equally amazed. This should not be possible. Only Kethmer minds can interface with our neural crystal systems. Dr. Peter studied the readings. Human brains must be compatible with their technology in ways neither species expected. This could be the advantage we need. But even as they worked, the sensors brought bad news. The hunter ships were getting closer. Long-range scans showed 7 of the massive bioships moving through space towards Zerion 7. "They're bigger than I expected," Alex said, studying the sensor data. "Each one is the size of a small moon. Size is not their greatest weapon. Elder?" Vexthal warmed. "They carry swarms of smaller ships that can phase in and out of normal space. Your weapons will pass right through them unless you time your shots perfectly." "But your weapons can hurt them?" Jake asked. "Our energy weapons can disrupt their phasing ability. For a few seconds, they become solid and vulnerable. But we never had enough weapons or enough skilled pilots to make a real difference." Jake looked around at his small crew, then at the few hundred Kethmer warriors preparing for battle. It wasn't much of an army, too. The stars looked different this far from Earth. Commander Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UEC horizon, watching the alien sun cast orange light across the desert planet below. 3 months of travel had brought them to the edge of known space, searching for signs of ancient life. "Sir, we're getting some strange readings from the surface," said Dr. Lisa Chun, looking up from her scanner. She was the best alien scientist Earth had, young but brilliant. "There are large structures down there, really large." Jake walked over to look at her screen. The images showed massive towers rising from red sand, each one taller than the biggest. Buildings on Earth. They looked like they were made of crystal, catching the sunlight and throwing it back in rainbow colors. "How old do you think they are?" Jake asked. "The metal dating suggests at least 400 years, maybe more." Lisa pointed to different parts of the image. "But look at this. These aren't ruins. Someone built defensive walls around the city. They were getting ready to fight something." Jake felt a chill run down his back. "Any signs of life?" "Not on the surface. But I'm picking up power sources deep underground. Whatever happened here, some of their machines are still running." The planet was called Zerion 7 on their maps, just another rock orbiting a distant star. But as their ship moved closer, it became clear this was no ordinary world. The crystal towers stretched for miles across the desert, connected by bridges that sparkled in the alien sunlight. "Take us down," Jake ordered. "Landing Team Alpha. Get ready, full protective gear." 2 hours later, Jake stepped onto the sandy surface with 5 other crew members. The air was thin but breathable. Around them, the crystal towers rose like frozen lightning, each one perfectly smooth and clear. Up close, they could see symbols carved into the crystal walls. "These markings," said Dr. Peter Grant, their language expert, "they're not random. This is writing, but unlike anything in our databases." Lisa was running her hands along the crystal surface. "The material is incredible. It's conducting energy even after all these years." And look at this. She pointed to a section of wall that had been damaged. Someone tried to repair this recently. Recently? Jake asked. How recently? Within the last 50 years, I'd say. The crystal growth patterns are still fresh. They spent the morning exploring the surface city. Every building was empty, but there were signs that people had left in a hurry. Furniture was overturned. Doors were left open. In what looked like a school, colorful drawings still hung on the walls, showing creatures with scales and large eyes. Sir, called Tony Blake, their engineer, from across the square. You need to see this. They gathered around what looked like a fountain, but instead of water, it was filled with a glowing blue liquid that moved on its own. Symbols floated in the liquid, changing and shifting like living things. It's some kind of communication device, Peter said, still active after all these years. As they watched, the symbols began to form patterns. Slowly, words appeared in the liquid. Not alien words, but English words spelled out in shimmering blue light. Hello, the fountain said. We have been waiting. The crew stepped back in shock. Jake was the first to recover. This is Commander Jake Sullivan of Earth. Who are you? The fountain was quiet for a long moment. Then new words appeared. We are Kethmer. We live below. You are the first to come in many years. Below? Jake looked around at the empty city. You're underground? Yes, it is safer there. The hunters cannot find us below. What hunters? But the fountain went dark. The blue liquid stopped moving and became clear water. Lisa was already scanning the ground with her equipment. There are definitely tunnels down there. Big ones. And I'm reading life signs. Jake made the decision that would change everything. We're going down. They found the entrance hidden beneath what looked like a collapsed building. But when they moved the rubble, they discovered it wasn't collapsed at all. It was camouflaged. The tunnel beyond was smooth and warm, lit by crystals that glowed softly in the walls. As they walked deeper, the tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber. Jake stopped and stared. The cavern was huge, filled with buildings and bridges, all carved from the living rock. And moving through this underground city were people. But they weren't human people. They were taller than humans, with skin that looked like colored scales. Their eyes were large and bright, and their hands had long, delicate fingers. When they saw the humans, they stopped and stared. One of them, older than the others, stepped forward. The scales on his head were silver with age, and he wore robes that seemed to be made from the same crystal as the buildings above. I am Vexthul, he said in slow, careful English, elder of the Kethmer. We have been waiting for someone to find us. But we did not expect humans. Jake removed his helmet, showing respect. I'm Commander Jake Sullivan. We're explorers from Earth. We saw your city and came to investigate. Vexthul's large eyes studied Jake carefully. Earth. Yes, we have heard of your people. Young, but growing strong. Tell me, do the other races still remember us? Do they know we survived? Other races? Jake was confused. Sir, we don't know anything about you. This is first contact for us. The elder's scales changed color, shifting from silver to deep blue. Jake would later learn this meant great sadness. Then they have forgotten us completely, Vexthul said quietly, as we feared they would. He gestured for the humans to follow him deeper into the city. As they walked, he began to tell their story. Long ago, we were part of the great alliance that rules the galaxy. We were members, with rights and protection. Our world was beautiful, with crystal cities that reached toward the stars. We were happy. They passed groups of Kethmer who watched the humans with curious eyes. Jake noticed there weren't very many of them, maybe a few thousand in the whole. Underground city? Then the hunters came, Vexthul continued. ancient enemies from the dark space between stars. They destroy everything they touch, leaving nothing behind. We called for help from our allies, begged them to send ships and soldiers. They entered a large hall filled with holographic displays showing images of space battles and dying worlds. But our allies had already decided our fate, Vexthal said, his voice bitter. They said our system was not worth saving. Too far from their core worlds. Too expensive to defend. They withdrew their fleets and left us to die. Jake felt anger building in his chest. They abandoned you? Yes. We managed to save some of our people, brought them here to this hidden world. But our civilization, our culture, most of our race, gone. We have lived in these caves for 400 years, waiting for the day the hunters find us again. Lisa stepped forward. How many of you are left? Perhaps 50,000, scattered in cities like this across the planet. We are dying slowly, too few to keep our bloodlines strong. In another 100 years, there will be no more Kethmer. The hall fell silent, except for the soft humming of the ancient machines. But now you have come, Vexthal said, looking at Jake with hope in his large eyes. Perhaps the galaxy has not forgotten the value of loyalty after all. Perhaps there is still time to make things right. Jake didn't know what to say. His mission was just to explore, to make maps and study dead ruins. But these weren't ruins, and the people living in them weren't dead. They were survivors, abandoned by those who should have protected them. We'll help, Jake said, not knowing how but meaning every word. Whatever you need, we'll find a way. Vexthal's scales shifted to bright gold, the color of joy and gratitude. Then, there is hope, the elder said, because the hunters are coming back, and this time we will not face them alone.